Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. Today, let's just go ahead and jump right in. Let's talk about how clothing is recycled and is clothing recycling really a good thing? Before we get too far into it, this video was inspired by a video I made a few weeks ago talking all about thrift stores and how donating to big thrift stores like Goodwill and Salvation Army might not actually be eco-friendly. You can check that video out up here, as well as you can read along with the script version linked down below if you prefer to read. So clothing recycling has become more and more popular. I'm sure you've seen clothing recycling bins in the parking lots of Walmart and other business centers. And I think clothing recycling is great, though it can be used as a greenwashing technique. So I have a full video outlining how to spot greenwashing for yourself. It will be linked above and below, as well as a free guide in the description of all my videos, all the different greenwashing techniques, and then like a little quiz to see if you have mastered greenwashing. But this is a case of greenwashing because oftentimes stores like H&M will offer in-store recycling in exchange for store credit, encouraging you to buy more and more fast fashion. So in cases like that, it's definitely not eco-friendly. It's used as a ploy to seem eco-friendly. And in this case, the brands themselves aren't even changing. Plus, is clothing recycling even effective? Does it even work? Let's first talk about what exactly is textile recycling. I guess maybe first off, we should talk about what textiles are. Just a really short explanation. So textiles aren't just the clothes we wear, but also things like towels, bed linens, blankets, all sorts of things like that. Anything made out of fabric. So textile recycling is the process of taking old textiles, old fabrics, in order to reuse and recover those materials. It is essentially like any other form of recycling you've heard of, like recycling glass, recycling plastic, recycling electronics, and so forth. It involves the donation, collection, sorting, processing, shipping, tearing all of these materials apart, and then eventually being resold in order to make new products. And textile recycling has become increasingly popular because we are starting to buy more and more and more. It is estimated that around 100 billion garments are produced worldwide every year. The US EPA estimated that roughly 17 million tons of textile waste was created in 2018 alone. That is about 6% of our total waste for the year. All the while, textile recycling is only about 13% of total produced. So the other, 87% goes to the landfill. That's a lot. And this is a video I want to talk about in the future as well, is how we're actually running out of landfill space, which is weird to wrap your mind around in the US where we have so much land. But ultimately, our landfills are becoming too full. They're reaching capacity, and we are also running out of land to put landfills. We are all over the world, we are running out of place to put our trash. So it is becoming more and more urgent that we find ways, quit these wasteful practices like at the source, but also take our things and turn them into new things. We need to create that circular economy instead of our linear economy of buy, use, throw away. And also, we will run out of resources eventually. I'm not saying this like we're gonna run out next week, but eventually we will run out of metal. Eventually we will run out of oil in order to make polyester and drive our cars, you know. Some are renewable, like cotton is renewable and so forth, but just because it's renewable doesn't mean we need to overexploit and overuse it. And recycling is so important, but I'm sure we all know by now it is a very, very flawed system. I have a full series talking about recycling, the do's and don'ts of recycling, the pros and cons, and everything in between. I will leave the full recycling playlist linked above if you'd like to learn more. And then another issue with sending our stuff to landfill in regards to this topic is synthetic materials like polyester and rayon and nylon, all that sort of stuff. They're synthetic. They are made out of oil. Plastic-based clothing does not fully break down ever, especially in a landfill. And even once it does begin to break down, it can start to be toxic to groundwater and the soil as well. Did you know there are different types of textile recycling? I didn't really until I made that video about thrift store issues. So textile recycling isn't just driving to one of those drop-off bins at the Walmart parking lot and giving your clothes to the bin. There are two kinds of recycling for textiles. There is post-consumer recycling and pre-consumer recycling. This goes for all sorts of materials too, and not just textiles. This is the same way for plastic and paper and so forth. What this means is that post-consumer is like stuff that we, the consumers, have already used. If this glass were melted down and reused and made into a new bottle, that would be post-consumer because I was the one who put this in my recycling. Pre-consumer is, say this bottle broke in production before it even made it onto the shelf, and then this brand recycled it into a new bottle. That's pre-consumer recycling. But in the case of today's video with textiles, it is something like this shirt. If I were to drop this at a bin, post-consumer. But if this shirt had just been cut out and all of the excess fabric around the shirt was scrap, they could turn that into something else in pre-consumer recycling. Now the good stuff. How are textiles actually recycled? Something else I did not know until researching this video is that not all clothing can be turned into new clothing. And there are a lot of differences actually between natural and synthetic clothing recycling. In short, here's what you need to know. Materials are sorted by type and colors. Sorting by color prevents re-dyeing the fabric to save energy, product, and pollutants. Sorting can also mean identifying textiles for reuse in clothing turned into rags or reused as fibers for other uses. Once they are sorted, they are then pulled or shredded into fibers and sometimes incorporated into new fibers into new yarn. After that, the yarn is cleaned and then the yarn is respun, sometimes into yards of fabric, other times it is compressed to use in things like insulation or mattresses. But that is mostly for natural materials. It is a little bit different for polyester. Most polyester-based clothing, like we're talking 100% polyester, and other sort of plastic-based clothing, they're usually shredded and granulated into polyester chips. This is kind of like the plastic nodules that are used to make things like water bottles and plastic cutlery and so forth. I found this super interesting. It is then melted down to be turned into new plastic yarn, essentially, to be made into new plastic clothing. Polyester clothing recycling is actually pretty effective, and it seems easier than recycling natural materials, but of course, it's still not the best material. And I imagine it's very similar to plastic recycling, like not plastic clothing. When you melt down plastic, you only get a small amount. I imagine it's probably pretty similar for plastic-based clothing as well. The good news is most recyclers report that about 50% of donated clothing can be reused, though this does not mean that 50% of donations are turned into brand new clothing. This can be anything from, yes, turning it into new clothing, turning it into insulation, and other things we just talked about. But what happens to the other 50%? Yeah, you can learn more about that other 50% in The Dark Side to Thrift Stores, linked above and below. Is clothing recycling even legitimate though? It seems to be pretty successful in keeping 50% of our unwanted clothing out of the landfill. But here's the thing, that was 50% of the donated textiles, not 50% of the total textiles produced. Many people throw their clothes away instantly. And like we talked about a little bit in the beginning, this does not include the greenwashing aspect of as well about the legitimacy of clothing recycling. And obviously natural materials like cotton and hemp, wool, and other things are a lot better for the environment to produce, as well as they are biodegradable at the end of their lives, which is pretty cool. But they are also very difficult to recycle while still maintaining their quality. This means that synthetics are more likely to be recycled and made into new clothing, while natural materials seem to be most likely broken down and turned into things like stuffing for couches and insulation. And the most difficult to recycle, as I talk about all the time on this channel, is mixed materials. That doesn't just go for mixed materials like something like this. This is a dog brush. That's metal and plastic. But also clothing. So clothing that is 50% cotton, 50% polyester, very difficult to recycle. Now, I imagine that if it's like cotton and hemp, two natural materials, it's good. Or polyester and nylon together, two synthetics, probably works. But when it really gets difficult is combining a natural and a synthetic material. It's not impossible to recycle. There has been a lot of technology in the last decade or so trying to find better ways to recycle mixed materials like this, but it's very expensive to do so right now. At the end of the day, should I recycle my clothing? The answer, I think, is yes. Just like with all of our systems when it comes to recycling, recycling is very important. The more we use it and the more correctly we use it, the better it can become. And of course, the more we advocate for better practices. If you want a great video on a brand that is recycling odds and ends, you can check out this video up here about TerraCycle if you have any weird things you want to recycle. Because like we already talked about, we're running out of landfill space. Eventually we're gonna run out of materials. Recycling in general is a great thing. It is just very flawed right now. And what it comes down to with clothing recycling especially is donate your clothes to reputable sources and not brands like H&M who are doing it for greenwashing. And first, I really encourage you to think before you donate, because yes, recycling is great, but recycling is just one step above the landfill in my eyes. If your item is still wearable, it's still in good condition, donate it to a thrift store instead, but again, be wary of thrift stores. Watch that video after this one. Or you can sell it on Facebook Marketplace or Depop. You could give it to a friend, you can save it for hand-me-downs and so forth. If the item is in good use, please don't send it for textile recycling. Textile recycling is really for things that like have holes and stains and can't be used anymore. And of course, you can recycle things yourself at home. I recycle so many textiles. This rug I'm always sitting on, made out of like 30 old t-shirts. I've made 4 rugs now. You can make makeup remover wipes, hankies, reusable grocery bags, dog toys, cat toys, pot holders, and so much more. And after all, if you recycle it yourself, it has a 100% chance of being recycled. But again, if we give it to someone else to take care of, it only has a 50% chance of being recycled. Also, if you compost at home, you can compost your clothing, your natural clothing that is not wearable anymore. So things like cotton, hemp, wool, denim, silk, and anything in between, as long as it is made 100% from plants or animals. Now, where can you donate clothing to be recycled? The good news about clothing recycling is that they can take clothing in almost any condition. If it's stained, if it's torn, if it's got like burns on it, if it's got oil on it, whatever. If it's in any sort of condition, it will be taken. So here are a few options. Check what the brand you bought it from. Brands like Patagonia take their items back for recycling, as do H&M and American Eagle. Of course, these aren't the best options, especially for these brands that aren't eco. Patagonia is pretty eco-friendly overall, so I trust them more than H&M. But of course, this is still better than the landfill. You can look up in Google or Ecosia, your city plus textile recycling. So for example, I would look up Las Vegas textile recycling and see if there's anything in my city that I can take my old clothing to. You can also use websites like Earth 911, Recycle Now, and TerraCycle to find options near you or to mail in your clothing for recycling. Another option is to check the American Textile Recycling Service for a drop-off bin in your area, and all of those websites will be linked down below. And then the last thing is to offer them up for free. If you have clothing that can't be worn, but you don't want to find somewhere to donate it, you can offer them for free on Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, and so forth. I know I would love to receive free clothing that I could turn into more rugs. I love making rugs. If you want a rug from me, let me know, because I am definitely down to sell them. And if I missed any other places that you think is a great place to donate your clothing for recycling specifically, let us all know down below so that we can encourage more clothing recycling. Thank you so much for watching along, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I really appreciate your time. I hope you found a lot of value in this video. I certainly learned a lot just researching it, and I hope that you did as well. Once again, if I did miss any important details, please leave them down below for the rest of us, and if you have any more video ideas along these lines, let me know. This channel is for you guys, so if you have any suggestions for videos you want to see, things you want me to research, please let me know down below. If you enjoyed this and found any value in it, I would really appreciate a thumbs up, and if you want to share it with others, that would mean a lot to me as well. And it would also mean a lot to the landfills. Because like I said, only 13% of clothing produced has been recycled. So the more we can donate to thrift stores to be reused and the more we can donate to be recycled, the better. It will save a lot of space in our precious landfills. And if you're new here and you haven't hit subscribe yet, I talk about all sorts of things zero waste, focusing on free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste and practical ways to be an activist. But that is all that I have for today. I really appreciate your time, and until next time, remember that your small actions have a big impact in the long run. Bye guys. If you love kombucha and you love mango, go buy this right now. Not sponsored. I saw it. I impulse bought this during my grocery shopping this morning. So textile recycling. A last remaining issue. I don't know if it's last. There are two different kinds of textile recycling. Post-consumer recycled. There are two kinds of, oh my gosh. This goes for all materials that are created and not just plastic, like paper, plastic. I said plastic. What was I gonna say? I don't know. It's just not, I don't know what to say. The other 50% scratch that. Okay, let's skip all of that. Once again, if I missed any important details, please leave. Goodness.